Alright, hi everybody, and welcome back to another video. So, this is going to be the 2020 Game of the Year discussion, and I'll be honest and upfront with you right away. This is the second or third time I've recorded this now. For whatever reason, the camera that I'm using is giving some weird audio buzz. I don't want it to be hard to listen to or anything like that, and so I decided, you know what, if it's not working, I'm just going to use the streaming setup, which I know is lower quality. You'll have to just suffer through not seeing my face in as higher def, but means that I can actually make this video, which is what is actually the most important. So, as has become a tradition now on the channel, this is the third year in a row. We'll go through the top 10 games that released in 2020 and just talk through, what they meant to me, why I liked them, and why they were important. I think 2020 was a lot of things for a lot of people, but one thing I think it was pretty consistently is a good year for video games. So when I started, it was actually pretty hard to put this list together. I thought it would be a little more straightforward about what my top 10 would be, but after doing a real honest review of what I played in 2020, I realized, wow, there was a lot of great stuff. So I'm not going to include any honorable mentions or anything. We're just going to get right into the top 10. But this entire list was very painstakingly put together live on the Twitch stream, so I will have a link down into the description below if you want to check that out. I went through the process of reviewing everything I played that came out in 2020 and then cutting the entire list down and organizing it, talking through my decisions, why I was doing certain things, why games moved up or down, what the rationale was. All that got discussed live on stream, so those are a lot of fun. People come in, we all just get to talking and celebrating a good year of games. So yeah, check out the video down below if you want to see the entire process of making this list. Otherwise, feel free to subscribe to the Twitch channel because I stream 3 days a week and it's a lot of fun. I quite enjoy the stream over there. So why don't we just get right into it then with my number 10 pick, which is Bugsnax. So Bugsnax almost seemed like more of a meme than a game for a while, but it really caught me by surprise with how much fun it turned out being. I remember on Twitter, I saw one of the developers that was working on it. I forget who, and I didn't find the tweet, unfortunately, before this. But they were comparing it to a few different games that inspired Bugsnax. And they had 4 games listed, and I don't remember all 4, but I know 3 of them were Dark Cloud, Pokemon Snap, and Viva Pinata. I think the last one was Ape Escape. And wow, talk about a way to hook me in and ensure that I am the target audience for your game. That had me sold immediately, especially if it was Ape Escape as the 4th one. But I will say I can see how all those influences play in, especially the Pokemon Snap and Viva Pinata aspects of things. What really caught me by surprise when I actually got around to playing Bugsnax is how full of a game it is in all aspects, right? So on top of the novelty of, yes, you're going around and trying to kind of collect these Bugsnax, these animal food hybrids, like that is funny, and they do an amazing job making it funny. But then it also has a surprisingly rich story. It has weirdly 3-dimensional characters that have actual problems and relationships that you can help them with. It's just they really took a lot of time and attention making this world somewhat authentic and somewhat believable. So not only did I enjoy all the novelty of the silly jokes and things in the game and the puzzle solving of trying to get the Bugsnax, but I also enjoyed the narrative aspect of it too, which really wasn't something I was expecting. So don't sleep on Bugsnax. It is a lot of fun, and it's just it's like a nice tight 10-hour game or so. It's just a really rich, full experience. So I quite enjoyed it. All right, next up here was one of my most anticipated games for the year, and that's the Pathless at number 9. The Pathless does something really interesting, which is strike a balance between this sort of indie-focused, artistic, very environment-rich platformer that I really fall for. Things like, Journey, Flower, Rhyme, games like that. it takes that and it has aspects of that, and then it also has aspects of more modern AAA games or open world games. I think the biggest influence on this is definitely would be Breath of the Wild. So in the Pathless, it's just all about flow state. It's a rich open world that you can explore. They pepper all these talismans around, and then you have a bow and arrow that lets you navigate that world by shooting talismans to get little bursts of speed, coupled with the little eagle companion that you have that lets you get some vertical momentum too. So those two things combined means you have a really good like freedom of movement in the world, and then it's just a really fun world to explore. It strikes that perfect balance of being fun to explore and filled with secrets, but not just a complete checklist like you might think of as something in a more modern AAA game. So it was a lot of fun playing a game where I could be really like sort of emotionally invested in the story and what was going on as I went through some of the more dungeon-like areas. And then also I could have these periods of 2 or 3 hours at a time where I was just exploring the world, finding upgrades and secrets, and just chilling out. Like it feels good to move around in the world in the same way that it felt good in Journey to, slide down those sandy hills and those sandy dunes. And I've bring up Journey multiple times as a comparison because obviously this game comes from a lineage of Journey. The creative director, the art director on Pathless also was a creative director on Journey. And then I would be remiss not to mention the incredible Austin Wintory soundtrack that accompanies things. I love Austin Wintory, and everything he does in this game is no exception. He is, once again, bringing the heat. So, really cool game, and just kind of squarely in my interests. It does a perfect job of being like touching and heartfelt, and also being just beautiful and relaxing and delightful. So, for number 8, we're going to switch up and do something that's a little less relaxing, and that is The Last of Us Part 2. I don't know that there's a lot to say about The Last of Us Part 2 that people probably haven't already heard at this point, and so I won't belabor it too much, but the rumors you have heard are true. It is a stressful game to get through. Like, it is very brutal, it is very blunt, and it is very graphic sometimes. Not even necessarily just in like blood and violence, but graphic in terms of like seeing what people are capable of doing to one another. That said, I think that the narrative direction they chose, which I won't spoil for anybody here, but I think that actually really worked in the context of the story that they wanted to write. I actually think a lot of the things that you can sort of frame as complaints or concerns about The Last of Us Part 2 do thematically fit and are thematically appropriate. The game is pretty long by action third-person shooter standards, which again, I think is important for them to really sell what they were trying to sell with these characters and to get you invested enough in the story to really feel one way or another, however you felt, to really feel that deeply. I think that the length was important. Maybe there's a little bit of padding here and there, but by and large, I didn't mind so much because, these environments are all beautiful. They're all fun to explore. There's a lot of different sort of approaches and tactics that you can take in different combat situations. The minute-to-minute gameplay is fun, and if you just string a lot of those good encounters together along with an interesting story, you're going to get an amazing game. Would I say it impacted me in the same way the first Last of Us did? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. It's a very different game. It's important to build on the first, but I think the tone and the spirit of Last of Us Part 2 is doing something very different, and I think that it's doing that effectively. So I would recommend it. I don't know that I will want to play it again. Maybe someday down the line I'll go through and do a run to get collectibles and things like that, but I'm kind of content having made my run through that game and experienced what I did, and I'd be lying if it didn't say it wasn't one of the most gripping stories of 2020. So Last of Us Part 2 is awesome. All right, number 7, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Was a massive fan of the first Ori game. Visually one of the best games ever. Soundtrack is one of my all-time favorites. It's just like it truly was like a complete package. It was everything I want in that sort of Metroid-like 2D platformer. It had the right level of difficulty. It had the right level of hidden things to find. It had the right level of character interaction versus sort of dungeon exploration. And most impressively, I think it had a really truly moving story. And I bring all those things up about the first Ori and the Blind Forest because, that sets up a sequel to do a lot. You want a sequel to do everything the first game did and more or different in order to sort of make it feel like a truly timeless sequel. And I think Ori and the Will of the Wisps nailed it. I don't know how you can take the story from the first game and top it in terms of like raw emotion at the end of it. But man, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, it is so good, but it is so heavy. I would be lying if I didn't say that, in several moments of Will of the Wisps, I was essentially just bawling. It was so affecting. And so much so that just the other day I watched Games Done Quick is going, and they did a speed run of Ori and the Will of the Wisps. And just watching the cutscenes in the midst of a speed run got me choked up again. So it is really impressive to me that they could take the first game and sort of expand on it in all the ways that they did, make one of the most visually impressive, beautiful sounding, and emotionally affecting games of the year. But shout outs to Moon Studios. They're doing amazing work. I love Ori. And I'm really interested to see, what that studio does next. They certainly are ones that I will be absolutely following in whatever direction they are. Honestly, Ori may have even placed a little bit higher on this list, if not for the fact that I played it at launch on a base Xbox One, which did not have, it had some performance issues. And so those maybe brought down ever so slightly its placement, but it's certainly no slouch, and it being number 7 in such a packed year, I think is still really impressive. All right, number 6, and this is one that I feel you are not going to see on many lists. In fact, this might be the only time you hear this game talked about. Number 6 is Banjo-Kazooie: The Jiggies of Time. What is this? What is this Banjo-Kazooie game, you ask? I know. Banjo-Kazooie: Jiggies of Time is a full ROM hack of the Banjo-Kazooie original game, set in the world of Ocarina of Time. So in the minute-to-minute gameplay, I mean, think of Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, it is exactly that. You get abilities that let you find Jiggies and honeycombs and all those types of things. You're collecting Jinjos. I mean, it is using the engine and the mechanics of the N64 games, so it really could just be a sequel to those. But then it takes place in the Ocarina of Time locations. You're in Kokiri Forest, you're in the various temples, you're in Hyrule Town, you're in Death Mountain, Lake Hylia, things like that. And that on its face would be cool, but it wouldn't be enough to put it onto the top 10 games of the year, right? Because you really have to do something more than just mash up 2 existing games. But what impressed me so much about this game is how well they took those Ocarina of Time environments and turned them into 3D platformer levels. I mean, these have been worked and tweaked and modified to truly be like genuinely fun, well thought out, and well developed 3D platforming levels. They didn't just take the assets of Ocarina of Time and figure out how to let Banjo run around in it. They really reworked that to fit in the context of Banjo-Kazooie. I mean, if Ocarina of Time had never come out, as weird as that might sound, and this game still launched, you would just think it was Banjo 3 and you would love it. I played this entire one live on the stream, and that certainly helped, but man, it was just, I could not believe how impressive this small team, I think led by, his name is Mark Kirko. I'm sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but how impressive this game was. And then on top of it being, just everything I described before, it's also packed with a bunch of other little Easter eggs and secrets and nods to other games too. So it really is just like this true weird prophecy fulfilled that nobody asked for. It's like how these two different things mash together so well, I'm not sure, but they really do. So this fan game, ROM hack, whatever you want to call it, did just launch in 2020. You can, if you Google Jiggies of Time, you'll figure out how to get your hands on it. And I would highly recommend everyone play this one, especially 3D platformer fans. It is really, really cool. All right, next up here, number 5, a game that I need to sort of look back and scold my past self a little bit on. And that is Final Fantasy VII Remake. When Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced many, many, many years ago, I will be honest, I was not super positive on it. I mean, I was happy that it existed, and I thought that it would be fun for fans, but I didn't think that it would be what people really needed it to be or wanted it to be. It is not easy. In fact, it's almost impossible to create something that feels appropriate to the nostalgia someone has held in their hearts for decades, right? Like the way I feel or you feel or anyone feels about a game that they really love is sort of an unreplicatable feeling. And no matter how pretty or how modern you make an old game, it's never really going to quite live up to that. It can get close. Things like Shadow of the Colossus's PS4 version get very close. But especially a titan like Final Fantasy VII, I just thought it was sort of set up to fail, like destined to be a disappointment. And I, foot and mouth, I had to fully eat crow because this game turned out amazing. From the moment I started it, I was 100% impressed at how well put together and how perfectly this game walks the balance of being faithful to the original while not marrying itself to the original in all ways. I think that the combat system is an incredible combination of everything that made Final Fantasy XIII good and some of the better aspects of the combat from Final Fantasy XV. I think that they did a really good job fleshing out a lot of these characters and making them more human, more relatable, and just more interesting, giving you more details. The environments are all gorgeous, high budget spectacle. The soundtrack, oh my gosh, the soundtrack is unreal in this game. It's remixes of these old songs, so obviously it has an incredibly strong foundation to work on, but or to work off of. But whew, so good. Some of these songs are just there's no comparison. It really was a magical experience. It was interesting playing through this and being so impressed after being kind of so neutral to negative on it. I will say, some fans may or may not respond well to the way that the game ended. I'm very excited. I think that it was the exact right decision to do what they did with this game and to sort of mark the direction that it's going in the future. Again, not spoiling anything for anyone that hasn't played it, but I think that the next game in this series will be truly something interesting to play. I'm very excited for the direction that it's going in for Remake 2 or whatever they might call it. I actually don't know that it's going to even be called Remake 2. But yes, if you have any nostalgia for 7, obviously, I mean, you've probably already played it, but this is an amazing game, one that you absolutely should check out. And yeah, it ranks very highly now in my list of Final Fantasy games. I really have to give it up to it. They did a great job. All right, number 4, Moon Remix RPG Adventure. So, if you've never heard of Moon, that is understandable. This is a game that originally launched on the PS1 in the late 90s, 97 or 98, I think. And was sort of just locked in Japan for decades. And finally, in 2020, this game was localized and released for the English market on Switch. And this is a game I've wanted to play for a long time. It's been on my wish list for many years. You know, I've hovered over the buy it button on eBay for a Japanese copy many times, but I ultimately never grabbed it because this is a game that the story is so important and the dialogue is really contextually important to solve puzzles. The way that this game plays is you basically follow in the footsteps of a JRPG hero. You know, it's called Remix RPG Adventure because you're sort of playing the anti-RPG. You follow this hero as they go across the land and, you know, slay monsters and do quests and things. And you're sort of trying to put the world back together and make things right and essentially fill the world with love in the wake of this hero. You know, you're reuniting the souls of slain monsters with their bodies, or you're fulfilling their final requests so that they can kind of move on. You're doing various tasks and helping people form relationships in order to make them happy. And you're just a character that wants to basically improve the amount of love in this world, which is the actual currency in the game, love. You get love points rather than experience points. And it is just so quirky. It's so one of a kind. It's so unique that I was just enamored with it. It's called an anti-RPG, but mechanically you end up playing it much more like an adventure game. It's a lot of puzzle solving. It's a lot of, you know, coming across someone and having to try to deduce what they need. Or sometimes the puzzle is even in just figuring out how to get a hold of someone, because it has a day-night cycle that is running constantly, and you may need to do certain things at certain times or certain days of the week to be able to even interact with characters. So it's not easy. You really have to throw your head at some of these puzzles. It can be very tricky to figure them all out. But it is really a worthwhile experience to do so, because you'll get something that is, there's never been another game like this. I think that the closest comparison people might draw in terms of just like general tone is Earthbound or maybe Undertale. The latter, actually, Undertale being very fitting because Toby Fox has cited Moon as one of his big inspirations in creating Undertale. And I think actually maybe the success of Undertale helped spur Moon's localization or English release. So cool how that sort of like cyclically worked out. But yeah, Moon is truly one of a kind and a game that I would recommend everyone at least try. It's certainly not going to be to everyone's tastes, but it is really worth checking out, I think, if you like any sort of off the beaten path type of game. All right, number 3. Number 3 is Astro's Playroom. I think Astro's Playroom is the maybe second best launch title ever released on consoles. First being Mario 64. But Astro's Playroom does everything it needs to get you excited for your new purchase and to demonstrate the capabilities of their new controller. I mean, from the moment you launch this game, it boots up like a demonstration, a controller demo showing you the features of the DualSense. And when it first had you squeeze those triggers and you sort of like felt the tension in the triggers as the rocket started taking off, it was the first time in a long time that I felt like, wow, this actually is next gen, right? Like this is something that's never been done before with a massive amount of potential. It was so cool. I immediately had to call the girlfriend over and I said, you have to try this too. This is so much fun. And she immediately was just like, her jaw hit the floor. It's everyone I've seen mess around with this controller and this demo has been impressed, and Astro's is the one impressing them. And then, you know, that's just the opening demo. You get into the actual game, and it is just this phenomenal celebration of Sony's entire history. I don't know that Sony has really done this before. This feels sort of like a Nintendo-ish move, but to really give your company's entire legacy such love and such attention is it's just so wonderful to see, and I think it's like really good for the launch of this new console to get you feeling good about what the future of PS5 might hold. I mean, anyone that has any affection for any Sony franchise is going to have something to love here. I mean, I was seeing references to some of my favorite games like Eco, Last Guardian. I was seeing references to things like Heavy Rain, Jak and Daxter. It's just, oh my gosh, there's so much, like it's so filled to the brim with nods and little like bits of encouragement for all their past games, all their past franchises, their past hardware. I mean, the collectibles in the game are literally old Sony tech. It's just so cool. And, you know, they do other things with the DualSense too. You get to feel like sand blowing in the controller, skating around and feeling like ice. The lines of the skate in ice in your hands was just amazing. And all of this is topped with an incredible 3D platformer. I mean, anyone that has talked to me about VR will know I'm a massive Astrobot Rescue Mission fan. I think that Astrobot in PSVR was sort of the game to point to for the potential of VR, along with Tetris Effect and Beat Saber. But like, it's amazing that twice now Astro's been a franchise that comes out on new Sony hardware, is an incredible game, amazing to control, fun to play, and just like it fills you with an optimism and excitement for the potential of that console. So it's an incredible experience. It's hard to recommend because you'll get it if you get a PS5, and it's hard to find a PS5, but I would tell anyone who does buy a PS5, Astro's Playroom absolutely needs to be the first game you play. There is no better introduction to that hardware, and you're getting an absolutely incredible game on top of it. The best 3D platformer of 2020. All right, top two. For my number two, a game that I think is no stranger to many people's Game of the Year lists this year, Hades. Gosh, there's so much to talk about in this game that I feel like I'm inevitably going to leave things out in discussing what I love about it. But I mean, Hades really does take the genre, the roguelite genre, I guess you would say, and make failure feel good. I died in tons of runs in Hades, and I've never cared, because you're always moving forward. You're always progressing. Whether or not you die or whether or not you succeed, you're getting more story. Your story is really intelligently adapting to what you're doing, and you're always getting to sort of feel the results of anything that you did accomplish. I mean, you could point to any single aspect of this game, and it really is impressive. I think the art style is gorgeous. The soundtrack is incredible. Darren Korb did amazing work, and it's really good about kicking up in the high action moments and winding down. Sometimes they're just like the baseline for some of the more chill moments. I think that the story is incredibly interesting and well written and very human. They portray relationships very believably, whether it's the relationship between Hades and his father, whether it's romantic relationships, anything, rivals, whatever it might be. It's written with a real human element that feels believable. And then, you top all that with, it's a really fun action game. It's one that is, it just feels good to control. It is tight in its execution as well. It's been my go-to game, the game that I return to when I just need something to play. And my partner, she's been playing it a lot, and collectively between us, we've probably put in, we must be approaching 150 hours at this point, and across all that, we've basically almost never heard any repeat dialogue. It's so full of dialogue that is so tailored to what you're doing, that there's an end and I beat it, but it just, the fun seems like it's almost endless at this point. It truly is impressive work that Supergiant has done. I have not played Transistor or Pyre. I will be playing them now that I've played Hades at some point. But this is coming from someone who played Bastion and thought Bastion was good, but ultimately didn't fall in love with it in the same way a lot of people did. So Hades is the first time that Supergiant has really, really caught me by surprise, and I'm really impressed by what they did. So, yeah, just an amazing testament to what that studio is capable of, and my favorite indie game of the year by far. So, really good. And then, drum roll, what is the number one game going to be? 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Aegis Rim? I don't know. However you say it, assume that I'm saying it the opposite way so that we can agree that I'm saying it wrong. But, wow, 13 Sentinels is a game that just sticks with you. I mean, how do you even begin to describe it? This is a difficult one to talk about without spoiling. The immediate comparison that I have drawn to many, many people, and I will say again here, 13 Sentinels is sort of like a sci-fi anime time travel-y type story combined with Lost. So think of something like a Steins Gate that is like very rich character development, but also kind of like this weird sci-fi mystery going on at the same time. And combine that with the character, the way that Lost handles characters. So, in Lost, different episodes will track different characters throughout them, and every character has their own individual storyline. It's the same thing here. And what blows my mind about 13 Sentinels is how intricately the narrative is constructed, but is still understandable and is still really human with a really good message in the end. They made 13 different playable characters, basically all of whom are interesting and multi-layered and have relationships with each other. They gave all of them their own unique mystery story, so they all have kind of their own thing going on. And then all that is in the context of this larger narrative and this larger mystery that's going on. And it's just, it gets you so hooked, and it's so, you just like, you never want to put this game down. And then not only is that true, but then the game is structured non-linearly, so you don't experience all events A to B to C to D all the way through. You kind of experience things at different points in time, and so they had to write it in a way that is chopped up and mixed around and still made sense, and it does. And then to even link that and become even more complicated, because you need to be able to jump from one of those story segments to another, they had to find ways to link all those different pieces in time. So, one character will be going through events, and they'll have a memory. They'll think of something that happened in the past, or, maybe something will jog their memory and they'll be reminded of it. And then it'll jump to that past scene, which might give you context for something you've already played previously or something like that. Thankfully, the game gives you a very helpful sort of timeline view of what all the characters have done and the entire story sort of in order. And it gives you like a glossary of all the common terms and things that reveals selectively as you expose the story. So it'll explain to you what something is, but then if you learn new information that changes how you feel about that thing or how you view that thing, it'll update to reflect that. So just a phenomenal story. And all that topped with, it's a Vanillaware game, so it has that gorgeous Vanillaware artwork that's just so like textured and layered and beautiful and blooming and colorful and rich. Oh, it's a lot of fun. And I was so addicted to this game from the moment I started it. All I wanted to do was play it until I got through to the end. It's a tragedy that the game is done. I wish that I could go back and play it more. It's always hard in these types of lists to decide how do you value a really rich, contained story versus something that is sort of endlessly replayable. But I think if we want to take it as a standalone narrative and compare it to others, I think it is one of the better ones, one of the more intricate and well thought out ones, and just absolutely a fascinating game and really, really just surprising coming from, not surprising coming from Vanillaware, but a surprise to me that I liked it more than I already thought I was going to when I went in expecting to like it. This has replaced Odin Sphere as my favorite Vanillaware game for sure. So I would highly recommend you check out 13 Sentinels. I don't think this game sold well, and I'd love more people to play it. So please check it out while you can. And yeah, that will do it for 2020. A really great year for games. Unfortunately, not everything could make it onto this list. There was still tons of other stuff that I played that I really loved. But, you know, such is the way of things. You got to narrow it down to 10 games. Like I said, if you want to watch the whole process of putting this together, it is available on the Twitch stream that's in the description. And otherwise, I'd still encourage you to come follow on Twitch and hang out, because that's sort of where I'm most regular and most active. And other than that, yeah, just, you know, it feels good to sort of map the year out. I'm looking forward to 2021. There's some games that I'm really excited for in 2021, you know, stuff like Balan of Wonderworld. Of course, now off the top of my head, I maybe will space on some of the more important ones, but 2021 is going to be an incredible year for games, just like 2020 was. And yeah, I appreciate you sticking all the way through to check out this entire list. I'd love to know what your top 10 games are. If you've made a video, let me know. I'll be happy to watch it if I haven't already. Otherwise, you know, you can leave a comment too. Just happy to talk with people and hear what you love. Maybe get some recommendations. Just like I hope you've gotten some recommendations from this video. Anyways, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I will just talk to you in another video. Thanks.